How is it possible that Lewis Hamilton was completely left out of the fight, while Lando Norris destroyed the stopwatch with a lap that no one expected at Miami 2026? Because what Hamilton has just revealed is not just a reaction to a classification. It is a confession that could completely change what we believed about dominance in Formula One. One turn, 1:27.869, and suddenly the entire paddock was silent. But here comes the real question. Was it simply a perfect lap? Or are we seeing the beginning of a new era that not even Ferrari or Hamilton could have anticipated? The story begins in a context that seemed completely defined, almost closed, where the dominance of the leading teams was no longer in question and where figures like Lewis Hamilton arrived in Miami with a very clear expectation: to fight at the front. It was not an illusion, it was a logical projection based on previous work, on the improvements introduced, and on the internal feeling that the performance should be there. But what no one anticipated, and this is where this breaking point begins to build, is that the real scenario on the track was going to completely contradict that narrative. From the first moment of the sprint classification, something didn't fit, something broke the usual patterns that we had been seeing throughout the season. Because while some teams were still trying to find the optimal operating window, there was one that from the first phase was already showing signs of something different. Lando Norris wasn't just fast, he was consistently fast, setting competitive times from SQ1, positioning himself as a real threat even before the decisive moment arrived. And this is not a minor detail, because in a sprint format, where the margin for error is minimal and track evolution is key, showing that level of control from the start is an unequivocal sign that there is something more behind it than simply a good lap. As the sessions progressed, the tension in the paddock began to grow, but not because of what was happening in front, but because of what was not happening behind. Pilots who would normally be in the direct fight simply could not get close. And this is where Hamilton's figure becomes even more relevant, because his position is not just a number on the table, it is the reflection of a much deeper mismatch between expectations and reality. When a driver of his caliber is almost 8/10ths behind, what is called into question is not his ability, but the relative performance of the car compared to a rival that has made an unexpected leap. And then we arrive at the key moment, that moment where everything changes, SQ3. Here there is no more margin, there are no more excuses. It is a return, an attempt, an opportunity. And it is precisely there where Norris executes one of the most impressive laps of the entire season, breaking the 1:27 barrier and leaving a difference that is not only large in absolute terms, but devastating in psychological terms for the rest of the grid. It wasn't just fast, it was dominant, it was a declaration of intent. But the most important thing about this act is not the return itself, but what it begins to generate: doubts. Doubts in the rivals, doubts in the engineers, doubts even in drivers like Hamilton, who come to admit that they expected something completely different. And when a champion of his level begins to question internal expectations, it is because what he is seeing on the track does not fit with anything they had prepared. That is the true beginning of the conflict, the moment in which history stops being just another classification, and becomes the possible beginning of a change of era within Formula One. And this is where everything ends up falling into place. Or rather, where everything completely breaks. Because what seemed like a simple sprint classification ends up becoming a direct warning to the rest of the grid, and especially to figures like Lewis Hamilton, who are not only beaten in results, but in understanding of what just really happened on the track. What Hamilton reveals next is not a complaint, it is not momentary frustration. It is confirmation that they have been surprised by something they did not see coming, something that changes the rules of the game in real time. Because when you coldly analyze the situation, the difference is not only in that lap by Lando Norris, but in what it represents. A perfect execution backed by a technical package that right now is working in a different dimension. And that's what leaves the entire paddock stunned. There are no obvious errors in the others, there are no extreme conditions that justify the difference. There is simply a car that has found something that the others have not. And when Hamilton admits that he hoped to be further ahead, what he's really saying is that his references have become obsolete in a matter of hours. This is the point where the narrative completely changes, because we are no longer talking about a close battle between several teams, but rather the real possibility that one has made a structural leap just after a period of pause, a key moment where technical development can redefine an entire season. And if that jump is real, if it's not specific to Miami, then what we saw in that lap is not the peak. It's the new standard. And this is where the most important consequence of all this comes in: pressure. Because now everyone is looking towards their own garages with a question that has no immediate answer. How do you get something back that you didn't even know you had lost? Ferrari, Hamilton, and the rest not only have to improve, they have to understand what McLaren has done, how they have done it, and why they were not able to anticipate it. And in Formula One, that kind of conceptual disadvantage is much more dangerous than a simple time difference. So what started as a spectacular return ends up becoming a possible turning point of the championship. Because if what Hamilton has hinted at is true, then Miami 2026 will not be remembered for a pole sprint, but for the exact moment in which the hierarchy of Formula One changed, and where Lando Norris stopped being a contender to become the new reference. But just when it seemed like we had it all figured out, an even deeper layer to this story appears, one that turns what happened in Miami into something much more dangerous for the rest of the grid. Because the real impact is not only in what Lando Norris did, but in what he forces everyone else to do now, especially Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari. And this is where the most critical act of all comes in, the reaction. Because in Formula One, discovering that you are slower is serious. But discovering that you don't understand why you are slower is directly alarming. What Hamilton suggests after qualifying is not just disappointment, it is uncertainty. And that uncertainty is what begins to generate internal movements, technical questions and decisions that can define the rest of the season. From this moment on, the focus changes completely. It is no longer about optimizing details or adjusting settings for the sprint or the race. Now the priority is to decipher what McLaren has done. Because what that car showed in Miami, that level of grip, that traction at corner exit, that ability to maintain stability even at the limit does not appear out of nowhere. It is the result of aggressive development, of technical decisions that have opened a window of performance that the others do not have. And that puts everyone in an awkward position, pursuing something they don't fully understand yet. And meanwhile, Norris becomes the center of everything without needing to say a single word. Because his return already spoke for him. He dominated every phase, controlled every attempt, and when the key moment came, he simply executed. But the most disturbing thing is not that it was perfect. It was that it seemed natural, as if that level was already consistently achievable. This is where the pressure really starts to escalate. Ferrari, Hamilton, and the rest not only have to respond on the track, they have to do it quickly, because in such a demanding calendar every weekend counts, and every 10th lost now can become an impossible gap later. And the most dangerous thing about all this is that McLaren does not seem to have reached its limit, suggesting that this advantage could not only be maintained, but even expanded. So this act is not about the return nor the result. It is about what comes next. It's about the exact moment when everyone understands that they are no longer competing on equal terms, and that if they don't react immediately, what we saw in Miami could happen again and again. Because when a team makes a leap like this, the question is no longer whether the others can catch up. The real question is how long it will take them to do it, if they can. And in the end, what Miami 2026 leaves us with is not just a historic lap or an unexpected pole. It leaves us with an uncomfortable truth that came directly from the words of Lewis Hamilton. Because when a driver of his experience admits that he expected much more, what he is really admitting is that something has escaped them, something that they failed to see coming, and that right now has left them exposed to a new competitive scenario. Lando Norris' return wasn't just perfect, it was revealing. Revealing because it showed a level of performance that does not fit with the order we had in mind, because it showed that McLaren has taken a step that the rest still does not fully understand, and because it made it clear that in modern Formula One, a single package of improvements can change everything in a matter of a weekend. And there is the key to all this. It is not the difference of 7/10, it is not Hamilton's position, it is not even the pole, it is the hidden message behind all of this. A message that points to a change in hierarchy, to a possible beginning of a new era, where roles can be reversed faster than anyone expected. Because if something has become clear after this sprint classification, it is that it is no longer enough to be strong. Now you need to be the first to understand what is happening. And today, the only one who seems to have that answer is Lando Norris. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.